I know you were at Salesforce for a few years.
I was in Salesforce for about 3 years, and I would say, like I said, I started with that 160, and then it continued to go up. And by the end, with equity and stock, I was at 190. By the time, just about like 190, 192 by the time I left, which I left in October.
Wow.
I'm a full-time entrepreneur now, but I would definitely say for anybody that's joining any tech jobs, get your RSUs, literally your employee stock plans. If you can get it match to the highest, like those things gave me so much equity in my stocks that I can chill. Like I don't have to like rush back to be in the weeds of anything.
So you good.
I'm chilling.
Welcome back to another episode of Day of My Tech Life. My name is Simone B, also known as Bees. And on this episode, we have a special guest. This is actually my neighbor.
Hey, neighbor.
Yeah, this is my neighbor, but she has a crazy background. And then also she's done something, or you do stuff that I had never heard of before, right? So this is Zalyia Grillet, and she's also goes by Za. And she actually works with me with Blacks in Technology in Atlanta, but she used to be a experienced architect, which is similar to UX designer, but it's like the next level, right? So we're going to go into that. And she is also the Chief Experience Officer and founder of TechUnleashed. So we are going to get in this episode and cover so much stuff. I know y'all been asking me to bring on somebody who knows UX, so here she is. Yeah, so welcome to the series.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, so to get started, like what made you want to get into tech, and where are you from? Like, what was your upbringing like?
Sure. So I would say I'm Trinidadian. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. Currently live in Atlanta now. Mm-hmm. But I would say my upbringing was definitely Caribbean. Sometimes I found it a little bit interesting. I'm like, wait, I didn't have collard greens until I was in college. Mm-hmm. Like so many different things. And I realized that my background was really unique when I started going to different schools, and I had an accent, and I had this and I had that, and things were just different for me. How did I get into tech? Ironically, I studied ethnomusicology in undergrad.
You studied what?
Ethnomusicology.
Okay.
It is music anthropology, which is the study of how music affects people socially, politically, financially. And as most anthropologists are, it's pretty hands-off. They just research. They understand people. And I loved helping people. I loved music. I loved like just kind of doing things differently and figuring things out. I didn't like the hands-off approach. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, how are we going to figure this out? And I pulled the whole 180 when I got out of school and did something completely different.
Okay.
And I started my own greeting card business.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And what I didn't know, but I found out, was that I structured my business riddled in UX strategies. So UX is based in design thinking methodologies.
And what does UX mean for the people who don't know what UX is?
So if I can give you a background of UX, it is literally how you create something to make sure that it is not just visually appealing, but functional for who it's supposed to be for. So if I can give you an example, if you are driving and you ever miss a turn because a sign was too quick and you're like, oh, crap. Yeah. Like, usually people don't think about how fast someone is driving if the speed limit is 55, but they put it so close to the exit, you didn't catch it fast enough. And I don't know if anybody has the opportunity, go on YouTube. There is a crazy video where UX is explicitly explained in a way of, I don't know if you ever had this problem, but an automatic sink dispenser, sometimes your hand doesn't like, when you try to get the soap and you're like, okay, what's going on? And it wasn't anything malicious, right? But the person who came up with that was a Caucasian person. And literally they were just like, I have this brilliant idea. They told all their friends, the friends invested, now we lit. You got this whole $1 billion project that went out into the world, but nobody tested it on melanin skin. And guess what? We out here with these soap like, wait, now I work with hand sanitizer before COVID.
Right.
And you like, what's the issue? But the issue was nobody tested that. Nobody asked the right questions. Nobody made sure to say, like, who's the demographic this is going to affect? Do we have the right people that are testing this product? And that's how UX forms. Like, you're able to actually go in and do the research. So a lot of people think of UX and they think, oh, design. Well, that means that you make things pretty. In actuality, it's a science. So hence my ethnographic background with ethnomusicology came in handy, because now I know how to research. I know how to ask questions and say, well, why do you do that? Like, is there a reason? What do you prefer? When you walk into a room, do you go left or right? Like, when you walk into a bathroom, like, do you go straight? Like, all these different things actually play a huge role. And
yeah, that's what Amazon's doing right now. You know, with their some of their stores that they have, some of their Whole Food stores. Yeah, they're literally monitoring and tracking every single thing that people do. So they're tracking, what do you look at first? Where do you grab? Yeah.
These bigger businesses, complete UX. Like Amazon, Apple, and Apple is a place where I actually used to practice UX. So I worked for Apple Retail for 5.5 years, and their customer strategy is UX based. Like, the way how they ask questions, the way how they go about and they train their people is literally in the design thinking model. And you're like, ooh, okay. And it's based out of empathy, like being able to sympathize or understand what somebody's needs are, but you already have the knowledge of what those things are. You're aligning. And that's what a lot of UX is. And I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and I felt like, you know, for me, as African-American, or I identify as Afro-Caribbean, we align immediately with a design thinking method. Why? Because we change the way we do things when we walk around. Like, even when you go to certain places, you're like, am I going to be safe? Am I going to be good? Like, and even if it isn't, you're like, okay, what do I got to do different? Do I got to go this way? Do I got to go that way? And that's a UX wireframe. Like, every Black person has design thinking skills. They just don't know it. Trust me, it saves a relationship. Asking the right question.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so what gets you mad? But let's talk about this.
Yeah, dang. So what type of skills do people need to get into UX and what's it called again? Experience architecting.
Yeah, so I would say one, strategy. That's a big one, just being able to strategize. But the deepest one is empathy. Being able to look at somebody else and feel. Like, when I got into UX, one of my biggest things was for my greeting card business. And my greeting card business was where I loved greeting cards. I grew up with greeting cards. My family wasn't the richest. So sometimes the way how we expressed our love was through cards. And we had to go into the cards and write things in it because it never said enough and didn't really fit.
Right.
So when I started a greeting card business, I literally walked into Walmart one day and I was like, you know what, I'm tired of this shit. And with my background in music, I used to songwrite. I used to do a whole bunch of stuff. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to go home and write my dad a card because I'm tired. And when I did that, he was always like heavy on me doing that. And when he did it, he was like, this is beautiful. So what ended up happening was that I started crafting cards for people. And I would have an interview with you first. It's like, you want a card? Let's talk about who it's for. What type of occasion? Give me some background on it. Like, if it was for your mom, like, what's your favorite memory of your mom? What's her favorite color? Like, these type of things that I'm getting to in depth to understand who I'm crafting this for. And unbeknownst to me, that's like a user persona. Okay. So understanding, like, you know, is your mom, how old is she? Or what's her background? What does she love? What does she don't? Like, you know, those type of things. And then crafting that card with that in mind and creating a digital product as a prototype. And then when that goes through, we go through an iteration because there's some things to change. And then actually finishing that product, printing it, and putting it together for somebody to give. Now, the funny part was I realized I thought my demographic from a business was like, oh, it's going to be women. No, it was men.
Right.
And the reason being is because they never knew how to express how they felt and never found those things. And in UX, how that pairs is that most of the time, most businesses know exactly what they want to portray, but the way how it comes out is usually in their own mind frame, not the users. So you have to backtrack a little bit and you have to ask the right questions and you have to be like, okay, how would your users do this? Like, how would they want to see it? And that's when you ask those questions and you go in. I love the user research. I'm always asking some stuff of like, how do you do this? How do you do that? Or just observing, because you'd be surprised people's body language. Like, it's so much that goes into UX. So to answer that initial question of just not empathy, but observation, being attuned, being able to listen, not to reply. And then also paying attention to how does this work easier? Like, I'm a big advocate of working smarter, not harder.
Right.
And with UX, that is the job.
Okay. Making it easier for the users, right? And building everything with the user in mind first. Okay, so how did you go from going to school for what you went to school for?
It's a long word.
Right, because, I can't pronounce it.
Ethnomusicology.
Yeah, that. So how did you go from that into, like, UX? Like, how did you get the technical skills?
Sure. So with the greeting card business, I realized it wasn't sustainable. I can't make 1,000 cards on my own. Like, that's crazy. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to talk to this many people. So I had to do a little bit of digging, and I was like, what is the actual, like, core of my business? And I found design thinking.
Okay.
And I was like, wait, I do absolutely everything in design thinking already. And when I paired it, started looking it up, research everything, design thinking is the fundamental methodologies of UX.
Okay.
And I was like, this is something I could do? And now, to give you background, I'm still working at Apple. I've been a person that loves technology, but I didn't think I belonged in that space. I've never seen anybody that looked like me. I've never seen anybody kind of go farther in that space. So it was just like, I don't know.
Right.
And it was real like, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, I hated Adobe. Like,
Yeah.
I was not good at Photoshop, like none of those different things. I was like, how am I supposed to design stuff?
Right.
But as I did my research, I was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. All right, we're going to figure it out.
Right.
So I joined General Assembly.
Okay, so you went to a boot camp.
I sure did.
And what did you, which program did you do?
I did a part-time UX design program.
Okay.
And this was back in like 2013, 14.
Oh, wow.
And my days was rough because my mom at the time, she was ill with Parkinson's disease and Lewy body dementia. And I was also full-time at Apple. So my days would start at 8 a.m., take the train to Manhattan, work from 10 to 8, go to class in Manhattan, catch the train, be in class till 10:30, go home, and then I have a shift as a caregiver with my mom. And it was crazy because I'm still learning stuff. But to be honest, I was learning things and I was like, oh my God, this feels like me. Like, UX really spoke to a different side of my thoughtfulness. It allowed me to feel comfortable because it was like, most of the time I usually got teased for being too kind. And I was just like,
yeah.
Too
nice. Yeah.
Right. But now my kindness gets to play a role in how things are built.
Yeah, okay.
And I was just like, oh, so you mean my thoughtfulness can actually craft a whole app? And it worked?
Yeah.
Oh, you can do that. And I can make some bread? Nah. Like, let's talk about it. So I really poured my all into that program and really did everything.
What type of hours did you have to put in doing that program?
Ooh, I chose to do hours because I would never forget I was in a class with 22 people, 6 women, and 2 women of color. The other woman of color dropped out. And I was just like, yeah. And for everybody else, they had a background in design. I felt so lost. I was like, I don't even know how to draw a square. Like, I could draw like some little anime or a little Sailor Moon, but it's like really going into Adobe, and at the time we were using Sketch. And actually learning this tool set. So I was like, I talked to my professor, the assistant professor, and I was just like, what do I need to do to get ahead? And they were just like, well, just practice. So while I'm on my lunch breaks at Apple, I'm in the office in the back practicing wireframes, reading books, and just asking a lot of questions. I actually got my first mentor from Twitter.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, Kat Small. Never forget that woman. She was a blessing because I was looking around and I was like, are there any Black UXers at all?
Right.
Like, anywhere.
Yeah.
And I went on Twitter and I was like, can somebody put me in a direction of somebody? Like, I really would love support because as much as I'm learning in class, they don't have the same dynamics that I would. Like, I felt lost. And Kat Small, I would never forget, didn't know me out of nowhere, hit me up in a DM and we were talking and she met me and she was like, here's what we're going to do. Still to this day, like, I think maybe even like last year, she sent me a random like, hey, if you're still speaking, like, and I was like, that's amazing. And to me, that was camaraderie and it kept me solid because I was like, I'm in a place where I don't feel as safe and I feel alone. So with that, it really pushed me to do the work. like continuing, like I would get to class early and I would redo my homework. I would go into office hours and things of that nature. And what was really interesting is that when we graduated, I was the only one that didn't get like a job offer. And my professor was just like, used to tell me like, you know, like you're like at the top, like you're gonna be good.
Yeah.
But I noticed that I wasn't. When I came out of that, I was like, damn, how am I gonna get a job? What does this look like?
Right.
And I was like, I don't know. And I felt really like discouraged.
Right.
Because I'm like, why is this the case? And it wasn't until I changed my name on my resume. I put Z.Grillet versus my full name, which is Zalyia. And I got callbacks.
Yeah. Look, well, before we get into that,
because
we can get into that. Yeah. But what I want to like highlight is that you did the work.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? You did the work. You're like, how can I get ahead? What can I do to learn this new skill, to get into this new career, right? You said you put in the hours, you went to office hours, you went to class, you did more work outside of class, right?
And I think it was also understanding my learning style because I am a visual learner. So that's what made me reach out on Twitter to somebody, because I was like, I can't learn all of this in a classroom where it's literally penny to everybody.
Right.
Like, I was like, I need somebody to kind of sit with me and show me like what this looks like. I need to see like what a decent portfolio is, because how you gonna tell me to make one and I've never seen what one looks like.
Right.
So
yeah, that's how I was with computer science. Like, I didn't learn how to program until I sat down with our student tutor that we had at the school. I sat down with him for 10 hours a week for a whole semester. And then by the end of the semester, it finally clicked.
It finally clicked.
Yeah, it finally clicked. I'm like, oh, this is what this is? I'm like, it finally clicked. Like, after a whole semester of 10 hours a week. But that's what made me get it, right? Just showing up to class for an hour a week was not enough.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say even after that, I realized just how hungry I was, because I was willing to do the craziest. Like, it was like I was going to different conferences. I was meeting different people, because now it's like, okay, I don't have a job, but I know I want to be in this field because it feels right for me. But where am I going to go? What is it going to look like? And I started inadvertently speaking. Why? Because people were asking me like, hey, like your experience sounds really different. And I was saying like, I felt uncomfortable speaking sometimes, and I would kind of like downplay myself. And then I realized that in order to remain authentic, I had to find some synergy. So I started talking about like how UX was helping me with my mom. Parkinson's disease is an invisible disability. And during my classes of UX, I learned heavily, I've personally focused on invisible disabilities and how to design for them.
Oh, wow.
And that's a lot of things that people don't think about. Like even now, when people ask me stuff to like do like a user experience audit, I'm like, did you run it through a Chrome like extension of just like the color blocking? Like, did you actually look through some of these things? Because grayscale, how people see things, that's an invisible disability that people don't think about. And most people don't design for. I would never forget my first internship. I'm not even going to say the name, but they had some crazy colors. And I brought it up to them and I was like, I know what the assignment is, but like, have y'all thought about this? And they were just like, yeah, we kind of are getting fined for that right now, but they're going to take care of that.
Oh, man.
And I was just like, wow. So with that being said, like designing for Parkinson's disease and talking about that and actually paying attention to how my mom would like move in the subway, or how she would need to take a bus, or how we shifted things in her house to help her, would start different conversations about UX, because a lot of people just think it's solely digital, but it can be physical as well. And I think those are some of the avenues that really launched me into my career more and put me in more spaces. And even with that kind of hungry aspect, I started speaking up, because I'm really, again, with being in UX, you got to be an advocate.
Right.
You're an advocate for whomever you're designing for. And for me at this time, I got to be an advocate for myself. So I would see all these different conferences, all these different engagements. I was like, well, as a Black person who is now getting into this career, I can't afford a $5,000 ticket. So, like, is there anything we could work out? Like, I remember that. And I went to this big conference. It was an Epicureans conference, which is like an unconference. I had so many design leaders, so many new people. And when I went to that conference, I spoke to the founder at that time, and he works with me to get not just a scholarship and everything paid for, but I would never forget this company. They're called Wayno. They do a lot of social good things, and they paid for my conference ticket. They paid for my flight to Lake Tahoe, California. They gave me spending money. And then on top of that, told me, like, whenever I'm in California, come say hi. And I did. And I did something that no Black person would ever did. And I got in a car with strangers after that conference and went to a stranger's house and to go and talk to different jobs in person. In California.
Yeah.
Because I've never been on the West Coast. I was like, I don't know when I'm going to be here again.
Right.
Because I can't afford it.
Yeah.
And ironically, the person's house of which I stayed in, her name was Helena. She's a really amazing photographer. I met one of at the time, I was gushing over her work. She was the head of UX at Google. Her name was Nancy Duong. Okay. And I met her in her house as she was taking photography pictures. Wow. And she stopped what she was doing. She canceled a meeting. And she said, do you have your portfolio? I was like, yes. Tore it apart in 10 minutes. It was like, come back to me. 2 days, I got it back to her. And she told me, she was like, okay, good. Now I know what type of person you are.
Yeah.
And after that, she kept me on my And I think that allowed me to, and this is why, like, now to this day, I'm a very big person of paying it forward. Because even though I got the skill set and the foundation, like, technically, I would not have been able to get into the door without strategic and genuine relationship.
So how did you end up getting that first UX role? Like, how did you get that UX role after leaving the boot camp, not getting any offers, and then you went to this conference, met this UX person from Google? Like, how'd you get that first role?
Between Nancy and Kat, they really helped amplify my portfolio and telling me what to do wrong, like what I was doing wrong or what I need to do better and how I can change it. There were a few other people who were mentoring me from Twitter. Like, it was so crazy, and I just was pulling a network because I was speaking on it. Yeah. And then from there, I started applying, and I was applying rigorously, and I got my first, and I was applying for jobs. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? Let me backtrack. Let me start with an internship. Okay. Let me see what this looks like. And being in New York, I was able to secure an internship, but I was like, I still need money. Right. So let me keep my job. And in doing that internship, I learned a lot. And that I was doing UX and design for a jewelry company. Okay. And I learned so much, but I also learned the good and the bad. The whole, like, UX team actually got cut by the time I left because they chose between UX and marketing. Now, for me, in my career, marketers and UX is either best friends or worst enemies. Right. And companies choose marketing because they show more of a lucrative dollar front, but UX shows more of the sustainability and lucrative sales and things of that nature. Long term. Exactly. Right. Okay. So you got that internship, and then how'd you get that first full-time role? Oh, how'd you transition into that? I got a phone call from GE Digital. Didn't even know they had a digital side, because you hear GE, you just think about lights and And I was like, what? Of course they would have a digital side, And they reached out to me, and it was like, we're trying to hire you for like a software engineer position, right? Now, I'm not a software engineer, at all. Yeah. But I wasn't unfamiliar, right? Like, I had to learn HTML and CSS as I was building some things out, because I built out an app as a first project. Okay. In my UX bootcamp, and I'm not a person about fake it till you make it. That is not me. I'm be like, it's not gonna work. Yeah. But what I did say was, hey, I'm not as familiar with this particular subject. My expertise lies in UX, but I am open to learning. Yeah. And when I said that, because I wasn't going to reply, I was like, this isn't for me. I made a mistake. But I answered back, and she's like, I'm so sorry. We actually are hiring for a UX person. Yeah. And I was like, wow. And I went through the hiring process. I would never forget my first manager. He was amazing. He was one hell of an ally. His name is Jesse Clark. And he really put me on. We were this almost like a startup within an enterprise type of program within GE. And I actually was that head UX designer out of nowhere.
Wow. So you went from an intern to head UX designer.
The only UX designer on that team, building out a program where we were doing, it was in cybersecurity. And we were building out this game and this program to test people's soft and hard skills at different hackathons to get talent into GE.
Yeah. Okay.
So I started working on that. So that's how I got into GE for the first time.
Wow.
And I was learning UX and I was just like practicing UX, learning. And I was just like, I tapped my mentors. I was like, what the hell am I supposed to be doing?
Right.
Because there was no UX at cyber at all. Like at all. I was the only UX person. And I was just like, is there not any UX person in GE?
Right.
But it was only in healthcare.
Yeah.
So it was such a unique space, and I realized that, like with any other job I wanted thereafter, I needed a team.
Okay, so how much money did you make at that first role?
Oh, $75K.
So you went from intern, no money.
Making a little something every hour.
Right. And then you had the Apple job too.
Yeah.
And how much were you making there?
Apple, it was hourly, and I think it was like, oh, don't get me to lying. It wasn't a lot.
Yeah, I think Apple pays somewhere around like maybe 15 an hour, something like that.
About.
Yeah.
And
so
because I was there for a few years, I got a little bit more. And it was New York.
Right.
But it still was New York.
Right.
Like, I literally probably spend half my paycheck at lunch.
Right. Yeah, so you went from Apple retail to making, you said 75 an hour?
75K.
75K. Excuse me. Yeah. So you're making 75K as a head UX designer, never really even had a full-time UX role. And then where'd your career take you from there?
Oh, so from GE Digital, I learned a lot. I was there for two and a half years. And of course, just like most companies, there were some layoffs and changes. So I went from working with one particular team to another team that was very much in the cyberspace. And I felt like, I was like, whoa. Like, if I made any wrong moves, like these 3-letter companies could come for me. So it was definitely a learning curve. And that's when I was like, I think I need a culture that was definitely much more team oriented.
Yeah.
I started tapping my network again.
Yeah.
My network, especially the one I got from that conference. And from there, I left. I was in Richmond, Virginia. I moved to Arlington, Virginia.
Okay.
Alexandria, the DMV, for Deloitte Digital.
Okay, so you work with Deloitte. All right. When you work with Deloitte, were you doing work on their commercial side or their federal side?
Federal.
Oh, so I didn't know you was in GovTech.
Yeah.
We never told me that.
Well, man, listen, we're not gonna go there. We're not gonna go there. But I did both.
Okay.
And I've worked on some government things, as you know, NDA, but I've also worked on some commercial side.
Yeah.
And I think some of the most beautiful pieces was that I got a chance to change how people looked at applications or to sign up for Medicare or like different things of that nature. We got a chance to build that. And I think those were some of the most beautiful moments, as well as Deloitte. Deloitte shaped me completely. They shaped my consultancy. Like the way how they teach you to be a consultant, top tier. I kid you not. Deloitte, Accenture, the big four.
Yeah.
They may have some unique things. I'm gonna leave it at that.
People end up on the bench.
And I left for cultural reasons.
Yeah.
But I would say I learned so much there. Like I learned just one, as a UX person, yes, you might have a project manager, but you got to manage yourself.
Right.
What does that look like? How do you manage your work? Organizing your files, because I've only been the only person in my files before. So in UX, when we use things like Sketch or Figma, those are the type of tools that we use. Just like Adobe or any of things, you have layers of how things are designed in. I had to learn a nomenclature of like how things are written, because somebody else is going to be in my file.
Right.
And somebody else is going to have to design after me, because I would pass things off. So I learned a lot of structure. And I think if you were getting into UX or you were getting into those jobs and those roles, if you want to learn structure, going into those bigger consulting companies are probably your best bet to start with. Like,
Okay.
truly, I learned so much, as well as I always felt like, yeah, I could talk to people, but I learned how to converse with clients. I learned how to accent our work and advocate for the designs that we were building based on the research that we did. And it was a lot of push and pull, because UX is usually viewed as a reactive implementation versus proactive. So when you have companies that are proactively engaging UX in the beginning of their project, they're very much like, so why are you doing that? What's this about? Why you need so much time for research?
Right.
Discovery? What? Insights? But the beautiful part is when we were finally done, those insights, 90% of the time, was different than what they thought. And guess what? You could say like, hey, I don't like something, right? But then when you say, I don't like it, but 78% of the people behind me don't like it either.
Right.
Which one will pay more attention to? And that's how we would have to do things, which is literally presenting data and emotions in the same entity and creating a solution to their challenge.
Okay. So how much money were you making once you moved up to the DMV and you was working for Deloitte?
I negotiated because they wanted to give me 90.
Okay.
And at that point in time, I felt like I'm moving to a state where everything is expensive.
Right.
But I also was learning and practicing my work. And I'll be honest with you, I had mentors and friends tell me, don't ask for that much. Like, that's an amazing number.
Right.
And I was just like, no, I want 6 figures. I deserve it. I work really, really, really hard.
Yeah.
And my journey and my trajectory in UX and how much work I did in the background that nobody knew was like, I'm not going there to be uncomfortable. I left survivor mode. I'm not going back into it.
Facts.
So I asked for 6 figures and I got it.
Okay, good. So you got to the DMV, you was making 6 figures. I agree. And I tell people this too, like, I mean, depending on how people were, right? Like, people have been in their careers for a while. They're like, that 90K is great for where you're at. You only got a couple years experience. That's great. But the thing is this, you get paid what you negotiate. So if you want 6 figures and you got the skills to back it up, you got the work to back it up, and you can show your value and prove it. You can show your value. Yeah, and it makes sense. And you tell them like, hey, I want this amount. This is why. They can come back. They can say yes or no, or hey, we can't do that, but this is what we can give you. But one, you should never take the first offer they give you. So if they offered you 90, they always had more room to pay you.
And the thing is that what I learned at that point in time, especially for women, like, we literally get hit with the lowest one.
Yep.
And as women, we normally would be like, oh my God, that's great. And this being my second UX job, that you're literally going 25K more than, like, it is just like, wow, like, I should. And I was just like, wait, hold on, let me take a second. And again, going back to my UX mind frame, again, that design thinking, it's like going through the discovery, paying attention. I did the research. What are people getting paid in UX in DC? What are people getting paid with my skill set? And what are people getting paid with my years of experience?
Right.
And
what tools did you use? Did you use Glassdoor?
I did use Glassdoor at the time and PayScale.
And PayScale, yeah.
And I also leveraged my network.
Okay.
I'm grateful that I had a good bunch of people that were okay with being transparent with their salary. And I think those are some real things. That's why I don't have problems saying it now. And for a long time, I was questionable because, like I said, I came from a modest household. Like, I'd never seen that type of money.
We don't like to talk about money. Black people, you know, any Afro, anything. We don't like to talk about money.
Because people are uncomfortable, especially when it comes from a different place. Like, I didn't even have comfortability about credit cards. I didn't know it. Like, with coming from an immigrant household, I did not understand American, like, I wouldn't say culture, but like just the logistics of being an American and the values that somewhat comes to it. Like, with my culture, it would either be like the Trinidadians, I'm a Yankee, to Americans, I'm an immigrant. And I was just like, okay, well, what do I get that they don't? Right. And I didn't learn about financial literacy until I was in college. And I was still afraid because I was like, I don't know what this is about. And I remember, again, going back to Jesse, my first manager, he was like, do you know how to budget? And it was a real question. And I was like,
right. Yeah.
Because imagine going from making hourly to salaried.
Yeah.
And then, like, I'm going to call a spade a spade. I had life shit going on.
Right.
My mom had Parkinson's disease and Lewy body dementia. I was grieving the fact that I left home and I left my family to deal with that. And then my dad wasn't, like, he also he was a heart patient. So I left my older sister and my niece, and they're not making anything close to me. So
Right.
now I'm like, I have a guilt trip because I'm like, how can I support? Well, you know what? I'm out. I went off to a new career. I can give money back. I could do that. And at one point, I was now back in survivor mode because I'm sending things and I'm doing things outside of my scope. And I had to get support. I had to understand that. My person at that time really taught me financial literacy and literally sat me down and was like, you cannot do that.
Right.
And I think in tech, when you start making more money, it's almost like how Jay-Z was like, he won't let his cousin throw $2,000.
Right, yeah.
Because it's like when people start to see a certain way, they're like, oh, well, you can do this, you can do that. And the reality is like, no, it's not more money, more problems. It's more money, more boundaries.
More money, more boundaries. I've never heard that before.
Hey, coin that.
Yeah, I never heard that before. So how did you go from Deloitte to Salesforce? Let's fast forward to Salesforce. How'd you make that transition from UX design into being a experienced architect with Salesforce?
So a lot of life happened in between that. So while I was at Deloitte, unfortunately, my mom passed away. And she passed away from nursing home negligence. So that was rough. And then 6 months later, I lost my dad to COVID. And
Sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And with that, I was at Deloitte and I had noticed how I was being handled. I had a difficult situation where they thought, when I say like difficult, like I remember being asked by like a psych person, because you have to do a psych eval for certain things. I was just like, he was like, I was getting questioned at work by microaggressions, naturally. And it's unfortunate, but as a Black woman in technology, I went through a lot of microaggression. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm a pretty calm individual. So if you come at me sideways, I'm usually, as a UX person, going to be like, take a second, think about it. So is this coming from a place of malice or is this coming from a place of data? 99% it wasn't.
Right.
And I remember there was one time this white woman, she was screaming at me on the phone for something I didn't do. And I was just like, but I just said I'm going to do it.
Right.
But then I also had a moment of like, but why are you screaming? And I remember like kind of coming back from my parents and coming back into the workplace, and that got brought up by like a psych person. I was just like, wait, why do you know about that incident? And I would say this, but being a person of faith and that situation happening, grief changes you traumatically. And I no longer had a space to shrink. I no longer felt like I'm going to accept the bare minimum. I knew, like, I was like, nah, this isn't going to work. So when I went back to Deloitte, I started challenging a lot of things. And I was like, hey, if we're moving in this particular way, why aren't we seeing diversity in leadership? Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing that? And I realized, I was like, I think it's time for me to go. And as soon as I started saying that, ironically, a past mentor from Deloitte, she was a leader at another company.
Okay.
And so said, so done. I'll put it in the atmosphere. God was somebody listening. And she called me one day and she was just like, hey, are you ready to leave yet? Like, I'm building a strategic team.
Right.
And she was one of those amazing people that literally taught you, like, when I, in TechUnleashed, we talk about strategic handholding. That was her.
Right.
Strategically handled all of us, all of the Black kids. And, like, really made sure we were always safe and we were protected. And I was like, you know what? Hell yeah. Like, let's go. And if I was to fast forward, she was at a company that got acquired by Salesforce.
Oh, wow. So that's how you got to Salesforce.
That is how I got to Salesforce. And it was because the company was doing so well because they were doing Salesforce solutions.
Oh, okay. Okay. So what did you do in that role? What did you end up doing in the experienced architect role? Can you break that down? And what was the salary like for that? Because I never heard of that. literally until today. Because when we met, you were just like, "Oh yeah, I do UX design."
Mm-hmm. Because most people don't hear it. Don't hear it.
Yeah.
So when I started at our other company, which was was Acumen Solutions, I was a UX strategist because I was like, hey, I more so like to think through the end to end. I see things like that. I can see the alignments. I'm like, where does this things go? So I started with that, which is above a UX designer.
Okay.
Because we literally get to shape what an experience looks like from the very beginning when you start talking to the company, you started to label things out, and then to the end and the longevity part of like how is it sustained in a roadmap. So when we got acquired into Salesforce, they had different tiers now where you have a UX designer, like a experience architect, and then goes like into like business strategists, things of that nature. So experience architect for Salesforce is that we are driving the experience of what something looks like, and you get a chance to kind of create and solutionize with strategy around that. So when you gave us the title of experience architect, I was like, oh, it's like building blocks.
Right.
Because we're literally building now within Salesforce and creating these different solutions. And it's like, this is what we have to do. So it sits between like UX strategy and experience design. And the cool part about it, which I used to enjoy a lot, was I was in the room in the very beginning. And I'm grateful to my background and how I grew up, how I intake information, because I would usually see things extremely different than most people in that room. So having UX, and which I really appreciated with Salesforce, is that they had us in the beginning of those conversations. So a lot of times when we were working with clients, we were working on their stuff from the very beginning, which was new to me. A lot of times we get put in the middle and it's like, wait, nobody asked the right questions during discovery. Like, do y'all even know the age range of these people?
Right.
Versus now with Salesforce, one of the last projects I was on, we went to 3 different cities to do user research.
Oh, wow.
Barcelona, Dublin, and...
so they had you traveling.
From Deloitte, I was traveling.
Oh, yeah. You going to travel at Deloitte.
You going to travel as a consultant.
Right, yeah.
It's giving no kids, no marriage.
Yeah.
they take advantage of that. My poor dog. He hated me. But yeah. And one of the beautiful things was like the globalization in culture. Learning that people do things so differently all over, which I used to advocate for, because like if we're designing a global product, we have to understand how they do things.
Right.
And I think that's one of the beautiful pieces of UX, is that you get to see the symmetry of the world, but also the differences. And we get a chance to align it to make sense for everybody. So.
Okay. So how much money did they pay you once y'all got acquired?
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, I know it had to be good because you're my neighbor.
I would say, so with Acumen, I went up to 135.
Okay.
And then with Salesforce, I went up, I believe, to 160, just about. And
that's really good. So since Salesforce it's not a startup, but exactly, not
huge enterprise,
right? Huge enterprise, but they have like stocks and bonuses and things like that. How was your total compensation? I know you were at Salesforce for a few years. Like
I was in Salesforce for about 3 years, and I would say like I said, I started with that 160, and then it continued to go up. And by the end, with equity and stock, I was at 190. By the time, just about like 190, 192 by the time I left, which I left in October.
Wow.
I'm a full-time entrepreneur now, but I would definitely say for anybody that's joining any tech jobs, get your RSUs. Literally your employee stock plans, if you can get it matched to the highest, like those things gave me so much equity in my stocks that I can chill. Like I don't have to like rush back to be in the weeds of anything.
So you're good.
I'm chilling.
That's what happens when you make almost 200K in tech and you do the right thing with your money, right?
If you can, get your financial advisors and learn into the HR products of your company. I learned that like Morgan Stanley can give me free advice if I have a certain amount in my stocks. I also reached out and was like, hey, I want to learn a little bit more. Can you please teach me? They would send me different webinars. And like I said, also being transparent with your friends, like people around you, like they know a lot more. And if you have that opportunity, do that.
Yeah, that's dope. That's dope. Make sure you're checking into all of the resources that your company has, because they got so many resources. Yeah, the wellness.
Get your massage every month for $100. You get back $100.
Okay.
Okay, like wellness benefits, mental benefits. You don't got to do it out. When I tell you I was grateful,
yeah,
like, because again, for me, a lot of my pivotal changes was happening after my parents died. So even while me getting into acumen, I was like, do you have a location in Atlanta? And they was like, we do. And I was like,
what made you want to move to Atlanta?
My mom.
Yeah.
My mom came to me in a dream and told me, like, I literally saw my unit in my dream before I moved there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I would have never moved to Atlanta.
I mean, it's a beautiful building.
Oh, yeah.
I seen that building. I was like, oh, I got to have this.
Listen, my view, I have no intention of home ownership.
Yeah.
None whatsoever. I didn't know nothing.
Right.
When I say literally, I woke up from that dream, I was like, what the hell was that? I went online and it just popped up. And I was like, nah, y'all are the Fed.
Yeah.
Like, it's something crazy. So that's how I even ended up here in Atlanta. And it was really like a lot of my life is really like purpose driven. And when that occurred, one of the issues was like, yo, I don't want to go into survival mode.
Right.
It was like, it's going to be a smart decision. And then we got acquired by Salesforce, not even like, 2 months later?
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, some things you just gotta believe in. You just gotta have faith.
Oh yeah. You have to.
Yes. Dang. So okay. So you were making 160 at Salesforce.
About
about 160 at Salesforce, and so you started making that money. And like, what did you decide to do outside of it? Like, how did you decide to start TechUnleashed?
TechUnleashed. So I actually went back to school, getting my MBA at Howard University.
You're doing that right now?
I paused.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I paused. And I only paused like those last like 2.5 semesters. I got in a car accident. So it just really mentally took a break. So I was just like, I'm gonna take a pause. But I started with Howard. And with attending Howard, I was an online MBA student, one of the first, like their first types of cohorts, like the second go around. And with getting my MBA, I got an opportunity to become a Hennessy Fellow. So Thurgood Marshall College Fund and Hennessy has a specific program that is for MBA students that are to advance them to C-suite.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Hennessy?
Or what Hennessy? Yeah.
That's crazy. That's kind of lit.
Oh, when I tell you, I never used to drink until I became a fellow. And now my favorite drink is a French 75 with VSOP. Okay?
Okay.
Yes.
Dang, that sounds a little fancy.
Oh, it's way too much fancy. So, but how that kind of occurred is that we're going through that process. With Tennessee, we had to come up with a community project. And TechUnleashed has always been in my spirit and my heart, but it's been very much like, I don't know if I could do this yet. So I've always helped people. Like people would ask me, just like I'm sure with you, they reach out to you like, how do you get into UX? How do you do this? And I will always carve time. I will always do speaking engagements. I will always try to like give my experience. Because my experience is different. It comes from non-traditional. I have like a lot of different insights. So I've tried that. But with TechUnleashed, I actually had a place to hold me accountable. So my project ended up being that. And I was like, wow, like I'm thinking through this whole process. And one of the things the problems that I wanted to solve was the experience gap in tech, as well as how are people getting into it. And when I say experience gap, is like one of the first problems I had was like, well, I'm a UX designer with no experience. So how do I get experience if no one's willing to give it to me?
Yeah.
And the apprenticeships that were out at that time were not really for me. They weren't really building for me. It was like, you got to move to Philly, you got to move to Boston. And the price point of living in these areas with the apprenticeships was not going to be feasible, especially when at the time I had financial responsibilities for my family. So I'm like, how can I do this? So TechUnleashed is a strategic tech apprenticeship for Black people transitioning into tech. And it's for all ages. You can be an early career, late career, middle, like it does not matter the age. The only thing that I am asking people to do is to have a formal background. Just like how I did General Assembly, or if you want to do another, like you need to have some formal training. But the goal is that I strategically handhold you through the process of joining the tech industry. And you start with a mental health professional. You get one-on-one support from an industry person. And you actually go through something what I called an imposter syndrome toolkit, Why? Because anything you're doing, 99% of the time, we don't do stuff because we feel like an imposter to it. It's like, I'm not really going to do that. I don't feel comfortable. Why don't you feel comfortable? I've never seen nobody do it that look like me. Okay, so how you going to change that?
Right.
And you're like, no, I'm okay. But now you got to dig a little deeper. What's the real fear that you have? Are you afraid that you're going to fail? Why do you feel like you're going to fail? And that's why I started with a mental health professional, because it's a lot of grief. It's a lot of things you got to transition through and grow towards. So I think with that being the case, they go through this program, and I have strategic programming where we work on your soft and hard skills. So you get media training, you get a chance, like when you look good, you feel good. You work with a stylist and be authentic to who you are when you show up in these rooms. Because trust and believe, half the time when I walked into a room, I did not feel comfortable. And I started with my nails of like, how do I remember who I am when I'm in a room? Because sometimes I'll be mute because I felt uncomfortable. But I had to center myself to something, and I was like, what does this look like? So bringing people back to that and helping them through that process. And now with TechUnleashed, just as we kind of build the apprenticeship program, because I want them to get paid. They got to start at industry salary. We're doing strategic events, which is actually showcasing our imposter syndrome, which is like immersive installations that include interactive art. It includes mental health and also technology to really kind of accent how you can combat your fears or like confront your fears and unleash your genius in that process.
Okay, dope. So with the apprenticeships, are they going to be working with you, or is it just going to be partnerships with like other tech companies?
They're going to be working with me.
Okay, they're going to be working with you.
They're going to get their own experience strategy from the very beginning. I want people to understand that you can pivot in your alignment. One of the things that I'm very strategic in is mentorship and feedback. One of the things you don't get a lot of in the corporate world is strategic feedback. People may say something around you, behind you, but not to you. And I want to be able to work with everybody, especially as you are going through this process, is showing you the data of your work and working through the emotions of how that brings to you. And kind of just walking through that process. I want it to be a prestigious type of moment, because we are all deserving of safe spaces. Especially when you go into tech. And most people are like, I want to join. But when they get into these spaces, like, what does this look like?
I'm the only black person in here.
Like, can I be myself, or do I have to just keep watching how somebody else does?
Yeah, so I've been to one of your events before. I actually put it in a video that went super viral.
Really?
Yeah. You don't remember?
I do remember, but I didn't know it went viral.
She didn't watch it.
Don't start. Like,
she didn't even watch it. So if people haven't seen it, it was my video on what I spent in a day living in Buckhead.
And you went to my event.
Yes, it was a free event, and it's pinned on my Instagram. So if you want to watch it, go watch it at Simone Mees. But her event was dope. It was very dope. Y'all did headshots. It was interactive. It was like flower bouquets. There was a lot of stuff in there. It was a lot of good people. So make sure they, where can they follow Tech Unleashed at? Where can they learn more about that?
So techunleashed.co, C-O, on Instagram, as well as that's our website. And we're going to be doing some signature events throughout the year, because that's going to be how we start to build that funding for our apprenticeship and also build community. Like, we really want to dive into like that fashion, tech, and community space, and just in being able to get people to authentically show up as who they are in the spaces that they're unfamiliar in, or the spaces that don't feel as safe for us to exist. So that's literally what we're doing as we move forward and building this apprenticeship program for people who really want to be in it.
Okay, that's dope. Like I said, definitely check it out once you get your background that you need, and then go work with Zah. So what's one piece of advice that you can give people who want to be where you are today?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say, for me, I was just telling somebody this today, which is sometimes you have to close your eyes and open your ears so that the vision can become clear. And just to elaborate, that is trusting yourself. That is trusting your intuition. And if I can give another piece to that, is remaining authentic in who you are. That is one of the biggest pieces. Don't sacrifice yourself for the greater good, because is it really good if you're not yourself?
Okay, I like that. So, Zah, thank you so much for coming out. Where can people find you at?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm always on Instagram. Oh So Lucky. So OHSOLUCKEE. That is me. I'm like a little tech girl, a little fashion heart, little be outside for things. And I'm also with TechUnleashed, which is, again, TechUnleashed.co. And if you follow me on both of those pages, you definitely see. But definitely we'll be coming around to different cities this year, specifically to start showcasing our Imposter Syndrome Toolkit through our Unleash Your Genius events. And just like a normal UX person, this is research for me. I want to make sure I'm making something that makes sense for who it's for. So if you ever get a chance to come, please pull up, give me your feedback. I want to make something great.
Okay. I love it. I love it. So, thank you so much for coming out.
For having me.
Yeah. So, this was another episode of Day in My Tech Life. My name is Simone B, also known as Bees. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any episodes. See you on the next one.
Bye.